Section 17 of The Scarlet Letter by Nathaniel Hawthorne. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Chapter 14. Hester and the Physician. Hester bade little Pearl run down to the margin of the water and play with the shells and tangled seaweed until she should have talked a while with yonder gatherer of herbs. So the child flew away like a bird, and, making bare her small white feet, went pattering along the moist margin of the sea. Here and there she came to a full stop and peeped curiously into a pool, left by the retiring tide as a mirror for Pearl to see her face in. Forth peeped at her, out of the pool, with dark glistening curls around her head and an elf smile in her eyes, the image of a little maid, whom Pearl, having no other playmate, invited to take her hand and run a race with her. But the visionary little maid on her part beckoned likewise, as if to say, "This is a better place, come thou into the pool." And Pearl, stepping in, mid-leg deep, beheld her own white feet at the bottom, while out of a still lower depth came the gleam of a kind of fragmentary smile, floating to and fro in the agitated water.
Chapter 14 is called Hester and the Physician, and this is really the first time that we have seen Hester and Chillingworth together since the beginning of the book. Hester does want to go to talk to Chillingworth, so she has Pearl go play in the water. Remember, Pearl is 7 and she's playing by herself, so I mean, you would think that she could be trusted to be like playing by herself by the water, but still should probably be watching out for her. And it does seem like it's a bad move because as Pearl is looking in the water, her reflection is like taunting her to say, "Come into the water." Oh yeah, that's a bad move.
Meanwhile, her mother had accosted the physician. "I would speak a word with you," said she, "a word that concerns us much."
"Aha! And is it Mistress Hester that has a word for old Roger Chillingworth?"
answered he, raising himself from his stooping posture.
"With all my heart. Why, mistress, I hear good tidings of you on all hands. No longer ago than yester-eve, a magistrate, a wise and godly man, was discoursing of your affairs, Mistress Hester, and whispered me that there had been question concerning you in the council. It was debated whether or no, with safety to the common weal, yonder scarlet letter might be taken off your bosom. On my life, Hester, I made my entreaty to the worshipful magistrate that it might be done forthwith."
"It lies not in the pleasure of the magistrate to take off this badge," calmly replied Hester. "Were I worthy to be quit of it, it would fall away of its own nature, or be transformed into something that should speak a different purport."
"Nay, then, wear it, if it suit you better," rejoined he. "A woman must needs follow her own fancy, touching the adornment of her person. The letter is gaily embroidered, and shows right bravely on your bosom."
Remember the last chapter, she had promised to talk to Chillingworth about Chillingworth not being such like a weirdo with Dimsdale, aka Dimsdaddy. I'm gonna make that a thing. Chillingworth says that he has news and that the magistrates are thinking about allowing Hester to remove the Scarlet Letter. Hey, that is actually pretty good news. But she then says that it's not up to them and that if she's worthy of it, it would fall off or be transformed into something else. Now, aren't they the ones that went and put it on her? So wouldn't they also be able to be the ones to take it off? But anyway, it's in her mind, this is what she thinks, so that's fine. And Chillingworth then is like, well, it suits you, and you should continue to wear it. I don't know how I take that from him.
All this while, Hester had been looking steadily at the old man, and was shocked, as well as wonder-smitten, to discern what a change had been wrought upon him within the past 7 years. It was not so much that he had grown older, for though the traces of advancing life were visible, he bore his age well, and seemed to retain a wiry vigour and alertness. But the former aspect of an intellectual and studious man, calm and quiet, which was what she best remembered in him, had altogether vanished, and been succeeded by an eager, searching, almost fierce, yet carefully guarded look. It seemed to be his wish and purpose to mask this expression with a smile, but the latter played him false and flickered over his visage so derisively that the spectator could see his blackness all the better for it. Ever and anon, too, there came a glare of red fire out of his eyes, as if the old man's soul were on fire, and kept on smouldering duskily within his breast, until, by some casual puff of passion, it was blown into a momentary flame. This he repressed, as speedily as possible, and strove to look as if nothing of the kind had happened. In a word, Roger Chillingworth was a striking evidence of man's faculty of transforming himself into a devil, if he will only, for a reasonable space of time, undertake a devil's office. This unhappy person had effected such a transformation by devoting himself, for 7 years, to the constant analysis of a heart full of torture, and deriving his enjoyment thence, and adding fuel to those fiery tortures which he analysed and gloated over.
Wow. Hester looks at Chillingworth and she's actually looks at him and she's shocked at how much he's changed. I mean, yes, he's gotten older, but that's not what's so shocking. The smart, studious, calm, quiet man is gone, and in its place is a fake person who has this black soul, just a terrible human. It's almost like there's this red light that's coming out of his eyes, and he's truly become evil because of what has become his life's work, and he was so much better than that.
The scarlet letter burned on Hester Prynne's bosom. Here was another ruin, the responsibility of which came partly home to her. "What see you in my face?" asked the physician, "that you look at it so earnestly?" "Something that would make me weep, if there were any tears bitter enough for it," answered she. "But let it pass. It is of yonder miserable man that I would speak." "And what of him?" cried Roger Chillingworth eagerly, as if he loved the topic, and were glad of an opportunity to discuss it with the only person of whom he could make a confidant. "Not to hide the truth, Mistress Hester, my thoughts happen just now to be busy with the gentleman, so speak freely, and I will make answer."
Hester feels so bad and guilty. She thinks that it's her fault that he's turned evil, and it's not, Hester. It's not your fault. But she's not there for that. She wants to talk about Dimmesdale, a.k.a. Dim's daddy.
"When we last spake together," said Hester, "now 7 years ago, it was your pleasure to extort a promise of secrecy as touching the former relation betwixt yourself and me. As the life and good fame of yonder man were in your hands, there seemed no choice to me, save to be silent, in accordance with your behest. Yet it was not without heavy misgivings that I thus bound myself, for, having cast off all duty towards other human beings, there remained a duty towards him, and something whispered me that I was betraying it in pledging myself to keep your counsel. Since that day no man is so near to him as you. You tread behind his every footstep. You are beside him, sleeping and waking. You search his thoughts. You burrow and rankle in his heart. Your clutch is on his life, and you cause him to die daily a living death, and still he knows you not. In permitting this, I have surely acted a false part by the only man to whom the power was left me to be true."
Shouldn't Dimmesdale be the one asking this? I mean, call me crazy, but why is Hester doing this? Anyway, Hester is questioning why Chillingworth has been making Dimmesdale's life miserable, and it's causing him to die a very slow death. Dimmesdale doesn't even know why Chillingworth is doing this or in torturing him. He just knows that he's doing it for some reason. So instead of going and asking him himself, he just goes and has his former lover do it for him. So weird.
"What choice had you?" asked Roger Chillingworth. "My finger, pointed at this man, would have hurled him from his pulpit into a dungeon, there peradventure to the gallows." "It had been better so," said Hester Prynne.
What evil have I done the man? Asked Roger Chillingworth again. I tell thee, Hester Prynne, the richest fee that ever physician earned from monarch could not have bought such care as I have wasted on this miserable priest. But for my aid, his life would have burned away in torments within the first 2 years after the perpetration of his crime and thine.
Chillingworth thinks that she didn't have a choice, and that if he had said anything, it would have made Dimmesdale die. Hester thinks it would have been a better choice. Okay. Chillingworth then asks what evil he's actually done. Well, I don't know. Let's count the ways, shall we? He says that he's treated Dimmesdale as well as a king, as a king would have been treated with another physician, because remember, he's not actually a physician, and that without Chillingworth's intervention, Dimmesdale would have died within the first 2 years.
For Hester, his spirit lacked the strength that could have borne up, as thine has, beneath a burden like thy scarlet letter. Oh, I could reveal a goodly secret. But enough. What art can do I have exhausted on him. That he now breathes and creeps about on earth is owing all to me.
Better he had died at once, said Hester Prynne.
Yea, woman, thou sayest truly, cried old Roger Chillingworth, letting the lurid fire of his heart blaze out before her eyes. Better had he died at once. Never did mortal suffer what this man has suffered, and all in the sight of his worst enemy. He has been conscious of me. He has felt an influence dwelling always upon him like a curse. He knew, by some spiritual sense, for the Creator never made another being so sensitive as this, he knew that no friendly hand was pulling at his heartstrings, and that an eye was looking curiously into him, which sought only evil, and found it. But he knew not that the eye and hand were mine. With the superstition common to his brotherhood, he fancied himself given over to a fiend, to be tortured with frightful dreams and desperate thoughts, the sting of remorse and despair of pardon, as a foretaste of what awaits him beyond the grave. But it was the constant shadow of my presence, the closest propinquity of the man whom he had most vilely wronged, and who had grown to exist only by this perpetual poison of the direst revenge. Yea, indeed, he did not err. There was a fiend at his elbow. A mortal man, with once a human heart, has become a fiend for his especial torment.
The unfortunate physician, while uttering these words, lifted his hands with a look of horror, as if he had beheld some frightful shape, which he could not recognize, usurping the place of his own image in a glass. It was one of those moments, which sometimes occur only at the interval of years, when a man's moral aspect is faithfully revealed to his mind's eye. Not improbably, he had never before viewed himself as he did now.
Well, that's a little scary. Chillingworth shares how much he has tortured Dimmesdale throughout the years and then blames Dimmesdale. That's a jerk move, sir. Saying that he knew he was being tortured and he was okay with it. Oh yeah, good job for victim shaming. No, that's unacceptable. He realizes that he's given up any sense of humanity and has become evil, and it kind of shocks him. He's like, oh dang, I didn't realize how evil I'd become. So apparently he's never uttered the words aloud or even thought of them, but now it's like this huge new revelation for him.
Hast thou not tortured him enough? Said Hester, noticing the old man's look. Has he not paid thee all?
No, no, he has but increased the debt, answered the physician, and as he proceeded, his manner lost its fiercer characteristics and subsided into gloom. Dost thou remember me, Hester, as I was 9 years agone? Even then I was in the autumn of my days, nor was it the early autumn. But my life had been made up of earnest, studious, thoughtful, quiet years, bestowed faithfully for the increase of mine own knowledge, and faithfully too, though this latter object was but casual to the other, faithfully for the advancement of human welfare. No life had been more peaceful and innocent than mine, few lives so rich with benefits conferred. Dost thou remember me? Was I not, though you might deem me cold, nevertheless a man thoughtful for others, craving little for himself, kind, true, just, and of constant, if not warm, affections? Was I not all this?"
"All this and more," said Hester.
"And what am I now?" demanded he, looking into her face and permitting the whole evil within him to be written on his features. "I have already told thee what I am, a fiend. Who made me so?"
Oh, it's getting good now. Chillingworth remembers what he used to be like. Yeah, he was older, but he was quiet. He looked out for others. He was a good man. He had a peaceful life. And he asked Hester if she remembers him as such, and she does. And then he goes and blames Dimmesdale for the transformation. No, he's the one who decided to do this. He's the one who decided that this was going to be his life's work, is to go and find out who Pearl's father was. It, just move on. If you don't like who you become, move on, man. You don't have to do it. And yet he's now blaming Dimmesdale for it.
"It was myself," cried Hester, shuddering. "It was I, not less than he. Why hast thou not avenged thyself on me?"
"I have left thee to the Scarlet Letter," replied Roger Chillingworth. "If that have not avenged me, I can do no more."
He laid his finger on it with a smile. "It has avenged thee," answered Hester Prynne.
"I judged no less," said the physician. "And now, what wouldst thou with me touching this man?"
"I must reveal the secret," answered Hester firmly. "He must discern thee in thy true character. What may be the result I know not. But this long debt of confidence, due from me to him, whose bane and ruin I have been, shall at length be paid. So far as concerns the overthrow or preservation of his fair fame and his earthly state, and perchance his life, he is in thy hands. Nor do I, whom the Scarlet Letter has disciplined to truth, though it be the truth of red-hot iron entering into the soul, nor do I perceive such advantage in his living any longer a life of ghastly emptiness, that I shall stoop to implore thy mercy. Do with him as thou wilt. There is no good for him, no good for me, no good for thee. There is no good for little Pearl. There is no path to guide us out of this dismal maze."
"Woman, I could well nigh pity thee," said Roger Chillingworth, unable to restrain a thrill of admiration too, for there was a quality almost majestic in the despair which she expressed. "Thou hadst great elements. Peradventure, had thou met earlier with a better love than mine, this evil had not been. I pity thee for the good that has been wasted in thy nature."
Everybody in this book has such a messed up relationship with each other. I'm just going to say that right now. Hester wants Chillingworth to blame her, but he won't, because he thinks that she's already getting like her just desserts with having to wear the Scarlet Letter and be socially ostracized. Hester then says that she's going to go and tell the truth to go protect Dimmesdale, which, why doesn't he just stand up for himself? Anyway. But then Chillingworth, instead of getting all mad about it, he's like, "Oh, I admire that. Yeah, I dig that. Good for you." And he's like, I really wish that you had met someone other than him, when you were younger. So him being Chillingworth, someone who's worthy of your love and devotion, because man, it's really gone to waste. You're like a pretty cool woman. This is like a soap opera.
"And I thee," answered Hester Prynne, "for the hatred that has transformed a wise and just man to a fiend. Wilt thou yet purge it out of thee, and be once more human? If not for his sake, then doubly for thine own. Forgive, and leave his further retribution to the power that claims it. I said, but now, that there could be no good event for him, or thee, or me, who are here wandering together in this gloomy maze of evil, and stumbling at every step over the guilt wherewith we have strewn our path. It is not so. There might be good for thee, and thee alone, since thou hast been deeply wronged, and has it at thy will to pardon. Wilt thou give up that only privilege? Wilt thou reject that priceless benefit?
Peace, Hester, peace, replied the old man, with gloomy sternness. It is not granted me to pardon. I have no such power as thou tellest me of. My old faith, long forgotten, comes back to me, and explains all that we do, and all we suffer. By thy first step awry, thou didst plant the germ of evil, but since that moment it has all been a dark necessity. Ye that have wronged me are not sinful, save in a kind of typical illusion. Neither am I fiend-like, who have snatched a fiend's office from his hands. It is our fate. Let the black flower blossom as it may. Now go thy ways, and deal as thou wilt with yonder man. He waved his hand, and betook himself again to his employment of gathering herbs.
So Hester's just like, okay, you're not happy with yourself. You're not happy with the way your life has gone. Like, why don't you go and forgive Dimsdale, forgive Hester, and try to be a good human again? Like, it's pretty easy, right? You know, he has that choice. Chillingworth has that choice. And then she's like, will you do this? And he says, nope. Everyone's fate, that the bad stuff's happening, so just deal with it. Just deal with it, really? Wow, what a gem. What a gem. And so then he's just like, meh, waving his hand, and then he turns his back to her and goes and starts like hunching on over even more and gathering his herbs and his roots and everything like that. This is intense. Oh my. How will it end? We don't know. We're going to have to keep reading. I hope that this has been very helpful for you, and I'll see y'all later.